Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're going to be diving into currency predictions for 2025.
Woo, exciting.
Yeah. Buckle up, though, because 2024 was a crazy year in the foreign exchange markets.
It really was.
And 2025 is looking like it might be even wilder. Think big, unexpected surges, surprise dips, and maybe even, whispers of a potential bubble.
Oh, wow.
So are you ready to figure out what's really driving these changes and what to look out for in the coming year?
Absolutely. And, this volatility is actually good.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's good for traders, creates opportunities.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, a calm sea never made a skilled sailor, right?
Well, right.
But to navigate these crazy waters, we got to understand what's driving them.
For sure.
Those key drivers from 2024 are...
Where were they again?
Geopolitical uncertainty.
Right.
Interest rate policies.
Yeah, those are still huge.
They're still at the forefront.
Yeah, you're right. Those themes are definitely still big.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the conflict in Ukraine, the tensions in the Middle East, and all that stubborn inflation. Nobody seemed to predict.
Right. Nobody saw that coming.
It's a recipe for market jitters, for sure.
It is.
But so how is 2025 looking different?
Well, what's interesting is the shift in focus.
Right.
In 2024, it was like the whole world was fighting inflation together.
Yeah.
Now it's all about individual countries, how their economies are doing, and how they manage their own interest rates.
I see.
It's gone from like a team sport to a solo competition.
Okay, so it's a race to the top.
Exactly.
And we need to figure out who's in the lead.
Right.
So which currencies are you keeping your eye on right now?
Well, the U.S. dollar is definitely a front runner.
Yeah.
A lot of analysts think it'll stay strong.
Why is that?
Well, there's those trade restrictions.
Yeah.
Especially impacting those export-dependent places like Asia.
Right.
Plus, all that continued geopolitical uncertainty. And then there's the chance that inflation might stick around longer than we want.
Ugh. Yeah, nobody wants that.
So, yeah, I mean, you put it all together, and it could mean dollar dominance.
So a strong dollar is looking pretty likely.
It is.
But I've heard some things about potential weaknesses, too.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
What could knock the dollar down?
Well, a couple of things could change the game.
Like what?
What if the Fed gets a little more dovish?
Yeah.
Softens the dollar's appeal a bit.
Interesting.
Or what if we see a stronger than expected economic rebound?
Where?
Like in Europe, China, or even the emerging markets.
Okay.
And of course, any easing of those geopolitical tensions or any pushback against those trade policies could weaken the dollar too.
I see. So the dollar's the reigning champ, but there are definitely some challengers ready to take its place.
Definitely.
What about the euro? Could it make a comeback?
The euro's fate depends on a couple of things.
Oh, wait.
If the European Central Bank decides to tighten monetary policy more, or if the economic data starts beating expectations, we could see the euro regain some ground.
Okay, makes sense. What about our neighbors to the north?
Oh.
Canada. Yeah. Is the Canadian dollar looking good these days?
The Canadian dollar is one to watch closely, especially if you're interested in energy.
Okay.
Its value is often tied to energy prices.
Right.
And those prices are projected to either stay stable or maybe even rise a bit.
Huh.
So yeah, the loonie might surprise us.
Okay, so we've got the dollar, the euro, and the Canadian dollar on our list.
So far, so good.
Now let's talk about emerging market currencies.
Ooh.
Those are always a wild card, aren't they?
They are,
Yeah.
and that's what makes them exciting.
For sure.
They have a lot of potential, especially if global growth does better than expected.
Okay.
One that's particularly interesting right now is the Mexican peso.
Oh, tell me more about that.
Well,
Why is the peso standing out?
some analysts think a strong U.S. economy could actually be good for the Mexican peso. Yeah, especially with those open trade borders. They argue it creates a kind of trade wall around North America.
Interesting.
And Mexico benefits from that strong U.S. economy.
That's a really compelling argument.
Yeah, it is.
So we've got the dollar, euro, Canadian dollar, and the Mexican peso on our watch list.
Yep, keeping an eye on those.
But we can't forget about those currencies down under.
Oh, the Aussie and the Kiwi.
Yeah. They've had a rough year, haven't they?
They certainly have. They're both at historic lows against the U.S. dollar.
Wow.
And they're so closely tied to the Chinese economy.
Right.
That makes them vulnerable to any problems in that region.
For sure.
But there is one development I find super interesting.
Okay, what is it?
They're breaking away from their historical correlation to precious metals.
Now, that is interesting. Why were they correlated to precious metals before?
Well, for years, people saw the Aussie and Kiwi dollars as basically stand-ins for precious metals like gold.
Okay.
It was because of their strong mining industries and because a big chunk of their exports were tied to commodities.
Right.
But lately, we've seen a decoupling, meaning those currencies aren't moving in sync with precious metals prices anymore.
So that old connection has been broken.
It has.
What do you think is driving that change?
A few things are going on.
Like what?
First, China's influence on those economies has grown a lot.
Yeah.
So as China's demand for raw materials changes, it affects the Aussie and Kiwi dollars more than movements in precious metals prices.
I see.
Second, Australia and New Zealand have been cutting interest rates like crazy, and that can really impact currency valuations.
Right.
And lastly, there's this feeling that precious metals are entering a new phase.
Oh.
They might be decoupling from those traditional economic indicators.
So it's a mix of China's influence interest rate policies and the changing dynamics of precious metals.
That's a lot to keep track of.
It really is. What about the Chinese yuan? Any predictions on how it'll do against the dollar?
The yuan's facing some challenges. The Chinese government did a huge economic stimulus in 2024.
Right.
Pumped a ton of money into the economy.
Okay.
Historically, these types of stimulus measures can push a currency down.
Really?
Yeah, in the medium to long term.
So a potential dip for the yuan?
Potentially.
But could there be a bright side? Could China benefit in other ways?
Absolutely.
Even with a weaker currency?
Even with a weaker currency.
Oh.
It's not a sure thing, but China could really benefit if global demand picks up.
How so?
A weaker yuan could make their exports more competitive and potentially boost their economy.
Okay, so the yuan's a bit of a wild card then.
It is.
Risks and potential rewards.
Exactly.
Let's move on to the Japanese yen.
Okay.
It surprised everyone with how strong it got in the second half of 2024.
It did.
What's your outlook on the yen?
That recent strength is definitely something to watch.
Yeah.
It's always been seen as a safe haven currency.
Meaning what?
Meaning investors run to it when things are uncertain globally. So if things between the U.S. and China, especially over Taiwan, keep getting worse, we could see the yen get even stronger as investors look for safety.
Makes sense. When things get shaky, people want stability.
Exactly.
Speaking of shaky, we can't ignore politics.
Oh, yeah.
2025 is already looking politically charged.
It is.
And that always makes things more complicated for the markets, right?
You're absolutely right. Politics and economics go hand in hand.
Yeah.
And 2025 is shaping up to be a big year politically.
How so?
Well, France is dealing with internal problems, and we have elections coming up in Canada and Germany.
Oh, right.
But there's an even bigger trend.
What's that?
A global shift to the right.
Oh, that's interesting. What does that mean for the markets?
This shift is bringing a focus on deregulation.
Okay.
And a real desire for economic growth.
Interesting.
We'll probably see some bold policy moves that could really catch the markets off guard and create both opportunities and volatility.
So some unexpected twists and turns.
Yeah.
Could you give some examples of how political events could impact currencies?
Sure. Let's imagine the U.S. decides to reduce its support for Ukraine.
Okay.
That could put immediate pressure on the euro against the dollar and send bond yields up in the Eurozone, especially in Germany.
Wow.
Or what if the U.S. increases its support for Taiwan?
Okay.
That could escalate tensions with China even more and lead to big swings in regional currencies and a surge in the yen as a safe haven.
Sounds like we're in for a wild ride.
Buckle up.
Politics really adds fuel to the fire.
It does.
But with all this volatility, are there any stable trends investors should be paying attention to?
That's a great point. Volatility gets all the attention.
Yeah.
But stable, long-lasting trends can be amazing opportunities.
Right. Sometimes slow and steady wins the race.
Exactly.
But how do we find those stable trends in the first place?
One key is to understand the economic and political factors driving them.
Okay.
It's not just about charts and graphs.
So it's about connecting the dots. Understanding the big picture.
Right.
Not getting distracted by the day-to-day noise.
Exactly. And here's something to think about.
Okay.
Don't be afraid to challenge what everyone else is saying. Sometimes the most unexpected currencies can be the biggest surprises.
Interesting.
The world of finance, especially currencies, is always changing.
Yeah.
So stay curious, stay adaptable, and never stop learning.
That's great advice. In a world full of information and predictions, It's easy to get caught up in what everyone else is thinking.
It is.
But sometimes the biggest breakthroughs come from questioning those assumptions.
Absolutely.
And exploring those less traveled paths.
Exactly.
So as we navigate these complex currency markets, let's embrace the challenge, stay informed, and never lose that spirit of exploration.
I love it. Okay, so first let's go back to that USD-MXN pair.
Okay, the Mexican peso.
Yeah, remember we talked about how it could benefit from a strong U.S. economy?
Right.
Well, there's another side to that story.
So maybe some weakness in the peso.
Possibly, yeah.
What's driving that idea?
Well, Mexico's inflation has been cooling down.
Okay.
And their central bank, Banco de Mexico, has already cut interest rates 4 times this year.
Okay. And how does that affect the peso?
Well, cutting interest rates usually makes a currency less appealing to foreign investors.
Oh, I see.
So if that keeps happening and the median target rate for 2025 falls between 7% and 9.5% like they're predicting, it could put some downward pressure on the peso against the dollar.
Interesting. So a strong U.S. economy might seem good for the peso at first.
Right.
But there are other things going on that could weaken it.
Exactly.
It's a reminder that currency markets are complicated.
They are. You got to look at everything.
What about that other trend you mentioned?
The other one. Oh, yeah, that takes us back to the Chinese yuan.
Okay, the yuan.
Remember all those financial inflows they're using to stimulate their economy?
Right, like pumping a ton of money in.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That can be really effective for boosting growth, but it can also cause the local currency to weaken over time.
Oh, so it's like a trade-off.
It can be, yeah.
So the yuan's potentially facing a double whammy.
Potentially.
Economic stimulus leading to depreciation, plus the pressure from a strong U.S. dollar.
Right. It's a lot to consider.
It really is. It seems like understanding these underlying forces is crucial.
Yeah, you got to see the big picture.
Not just chase headlines.
Exactly. So you know what? This makes me think about something else.
What's that?
Safe haven currencies.
Ah, yes, those reliable currencies.
Right, like when the market gets scared, investors want to put their money somewhere safe and stable.
Sure.
And certain currencies, usually from politically neutral countries with strong economies, tend to benefit from this flight to safety.
So it's like seeking shelter when the financial storm hits.
Exactly.
We talked about the Japanese yen as a safe haven.
We did.
But are there other currencies that investors flock to?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Like what?
Well, the Swiss franc is a classic one.
Okay, the Swiss franc.
Switzerland has always been known for being neutral and stable.
Yeah, makes sense.
So their currency is a popular choice when things are uncertain globally. And this might surprise you, but even the U.S. dollar can act as a safe haven.
Really?
Yeah, even with those potential weaknesses we talked about. It's because it's the world's main reserve currency.
Right, it still has that global power.
It does.
Are there any other currencies that might surprise us with their safe haven appeal?
Oh, this is where it gets interesting.
Okay, tell me.
Some analysts think gold could make a comeback as a safe haven asset.
A gold.
Yeah. Remember how we talked about the Aussie and Kiwi dollars breaking away from precious metals?
Right.
Well, that suggests that gold might be doing its own thing, moving independently of traditional currency movements.
That's fascinating. Gold has always had that image of stability.
It has.
So it makes sense that investors might turn to it when currencies feel risky.
It does, but gold isn't that easy to trade.
Right. It's not like just buying stocks.
Exactly. Are there any other alternative safe havens out there?
Yeah. Are there any other options?
Well, this might surprise you even more.
What is it?
Some experts are looking at digital currencies as potential safe havens.
Really? Like which ones?
Bitcoin specifically.
Bitcoin as a safe haven.
I know it sounds strange, right?
Yeah, it does. It's known for being so volatile.
It is, but here's the thing.
Okay.
Bitcoin is decentralized.
Right.
And there's a limited supply. So that could appeal to investors who are worried about governments or central banks manipulating or devaluing traditional currencies.
Oh, I see. So it's like being outside the control of traditional systems.
Exactly. Like a digital gold rush.
But wouldn't Bitcoin's volatility make it a risky choice for a safe haven?
You're right. It's still very volatile.
Yeah.
And we don't know if it'll be a true safe haven in the long run, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on.
Okay, especially with all the geopolitical and economic uncertainty in the world.
For sure.
So we've got a whole bunch of safe haven options then.
It's a long list.
The traditional ones like the yen and the Swiss franc.
Yeah, the classic.
The U.S. dollar, which is kind of a paradox.
Right.
The enduring appeal of gold.
Yeah.
And then the potential of Bitcoin. which is still pretty volatile.
Yeah, it's a mixed bag.
It's a diverse toolbox for navigating uncertainty.
It is. So let's bring it back to those main contenders for 2025.
Okay, our currency watch list.
Yeah, we've got some potential winners and losers.
Right, based on what the analysts are saying.
Exactly. The U.S. dollar seems strong.
Yeah.
But those challengers are still out there.
Right.
The euro could bounce back.
Mm-hmm.
The Canadian dollar has that energy connection.
Right.
And then there's that wild card, the Mexican peso.
It's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out.
It is.
And don't forget those emerging market currencies.
Oh, yeah. Those could really take off.
If global growth picks up.
Exactly. It's a dynamic landscape with a lot going on.
So many factors.
But that's what makes it so exciting.
Yeah, for those who are willing to do the work,
Right.
stay informed and adapt to all the changes.
It's not for the faint of heart.
Yeah, it is not.
Hmm.
But there could be some big rewards for those who can figure it out.
Definitely for those who can decipher the signals and navigate the volatility.
Speaking of volatility, we've talked a lot about that.
We have.
But I want to touch on something that people often forget about.
What's that?
The power of stable trends.
Well, that's a fantastic point. It's easy to get caught up in the big swings and the drama, but those stable, long-lasting trends can be really great opportunities.
Right. Sometimes slow and steady wins the race.
Exactly. Sometimes the real winners are those who can identify those consistent, predictable movements and ride them to success.
Like the tortoise and the hare.
I love it.
Slow and steady sometimes wins.
You got it.
Yeah.
So how do we find these stable trends in the first place?
Yeah, what should we be looking for?
Well, one important thing is to understand the economic and political factors that are driving those trends.
Okay.
It's not just about looking at charts and graphs.
So it's about understanding the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Connecting the dots, not getting distracted by all the daily noise.
Absolutely. And here's one last thing to think about.
Okay, what is it?
Don't be afraid to challenge the conventional wisdom.
Oh, I like that.
Sometimes those unexpected currencies are the ones that surprise us the most.
Interesting.
The world of finance, especially currencies, is always changing.
Yeah, you got to stay on your toes.
You do. So stay curious, stay adaptable, and never stop learning.
That's such an important reminder. In a world full of information and predictions.
It's easy to just follow the crowd.
It is. But sometimes the real breakthroughs come from questioning things.
Yeah.
And exploring those less traveled paths.
Absolutely. So as we try to understand these complex currency markets, let's embrace the challenge, stay informed, and never lose that curiosity.
I love that. It's all about exploring and learning.
Yeah, it really is. The only constant is change, right?
So true, especially in the currency markets. And that adaptability you mentioned, that's so important.
It is.
I mean, we've gone from like geopolitical tensions and interest rates to safe havens.
Yeah.
And even Bitcoin as a unconventional safe haven.
It's been quite the journey.
It really has.
But that's what makes this so interesting, right?
Yeah.
There are always new connections to discover, new trends to analyze,
For sure.
and new challenges to think about.
Exactly. And for everyone listening, remember, we've only just scratched the surface here.
Yeah, we just gave you a taste.
There's a ton more information out there.
A whole world of it.
About each of these currencies, the economies behind them.
Right.
The political events that could shake things up.
Yeah, you got to stay informed.
And the trading strategies that can help you navigate it all.
It's a lot to learn.
It is.
But this deep dive is just the beginning.
Right. It's a starting point.
The real learning starts when you dig deeper, explore different perspectives, and start forming your own conclusions.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final thought.
Okay.
Question to think about.
Ooh, I love a good question.
As you continue exploring these currency markets,
hit me with it.
Think about everything we talked about today.
Okay.
All those political and economic factors, those stable trends, and the crazy swings.
Yeah, I'm thinking.
Now picture yourself at the end of 2025.
Okay. End of 2025.
Which currency do you think will have done the best?
That's a good one.
And more importantly, why?
Yeah, you really got to think about everything we've discussed.
Exactly. There's no right or wrong answer.
It's all about making an educated guess.
It is. It's about understanding the dynamics.
Right.
Weighing the possibilities.
Yeah.
And making an informed decision.
Who knows? Maybe you'll be right.
Maybe.
On that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive.
I agree. It's been a pleasure exploring all this with you.
It has been.
And we hope everyone listening enjoyed it too.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
And remember, whether you're a seasoned trader or just starting out,
it doesn't matter.
The most important thing is to stay curious, stay informed, and keep learning.
Well said. Couldn't agree more.
Well, on that note, we'll sign off for today.
Sounds good.
We'll be back soon with another deep dive into a new topic.
Can't wait.
Ready to uncover more knowledge and spark those aha moments.
We'll be there.
Until then, keep exploring, keep learning, and happy trading.